Hello, children. Welcome to Diksha online program. Today, we are going to talk on a chemistry topic. Lecture number one, chemistry of organic compounds. So, today we are starting our organic chemistry. Lecture one, the most important branch of chemistry which deals with compounds of carbon and its properties in a detailed way. And we are going to see in upcoming three lectures the same topic, chemistry of organic compounds. First, we are going to start with the history of the properties of carbon and its different types of compounds formed by the carbon, and later we slowly move into the introduction of organic chemistry. So, the first one is carbon and carbon containing compounds. So, carbon is a non metallic compound. As we know, this is the sixth element in the periodic table, which comes in the p block elements, 14th group, the first member of 14th group elements, the non-metal present in the 14th group element. It is found in the free state in nature as graphite and diamond. It is also present in the compound form like carbon dioxide, biogas, petroleum, marsh gas. Marsh gas is a poisonous gas. We know carbon dioxide. Right now, it is because of many other human activities also. Carbon dioxide is increasing in the atmosphere, causing the adverse effects. Like everyone knows, global warming. This is also a factor. But we are talking about natural existences. So, carbon dioxide, biogas, petroleum, marsh gas. It is carbon has atomic number 6 and atomic mass 12. And the most important point of carbon, if you have to say, carbon can only have valency 4. From chemical bond perspective, if you see, carbon can have 4 bonds around it. It can exist in this way. This is called as saturated carbon. Saturated carbon. It can exist in this way, carbon double bond carbon. It can exist in this way also. So I can say this carbon is unsaturated, double bonded carbon, double bonded carbon. I can also say carbon can exist with C, which is an unsaturated carbon, which can be a triple bonded carbon. There is another possibility as well. This can have double bonds on both sides. This is also an unsaturated, but this can be accumulated diene carbon, we call accumulated dienes, or allenes, we call allenes. In all the cases, if you observe, this carbon is an sp3 carbon, this carbon is an sp2 carbon, this carbon and this carbon, both the cases we have carbon will be with sp hybridization. So the hybridizations of these carbons will be sp3, sp2, sp hybridizations. So the elements which we are talking about here, the orbitals will have the unsaturation and double bonded, triple bonded, single bonded. These all will be the conditions which we are talking here. Moving forward, the properties of carbon, we are going to see the properties of carbon. It is indicated with the symbol C. As we know, I already said it is a non-metal. But from where the word carbon has come, here we are giving you this. It is derived from the Latin word carbo. Carbon is taken from the Latin word carbo, means coal. As we already know, every time coal is made of only one element in it, it's carbon. But coal is an amorphous form of carbon. Different allotropic forms are possible for carbon. In that, coal comes under amorphous form of the carbon, black color. And this particular coal, if you go for destructive distillation, it will give you coke, which is used in the laboratories as a reducing agent. In metallurgical process, mostly they use coke as reducing agent, which is not a natural material, but it is the material which is produced by distillation of coal. So it is an artificial substance derived from coal, is coke. The amount of carbon present in the Earth's crust and atmosphere is very, very small. If you observe, it is only just 0.02% in the Earth crust. In earth crust it is only 0.02%, whereas in atmosphere it is having only 0.03% of carbon dioxide gas. If you observe the carbon dioxide, percentage of carbon dioxide is less when compared to one of the inert gas like argon. Argon is more abundant than carbon dioxide, so carbon dioxide is only less abundant in atmosphere. All the living things, plants, animals, they are all made of carbon based compounds which are called as organic compounds. Simple example, if I ask you, without which the survival is difficult, food is, it is nothing but carbohydrates should have carbon. Without carbon not possible. For a person to have good muscles, anything, proteins is compulsory. Protein is amino acid, as building blocks of amino acids is proteins. So the peptide linkages formed by the amino acids gives you proteins, and these proteins have carbon compulsory in the proteins. DNA, RNA, anything you take, carbon is one of the major component in that. Without carbon, you can't imagine the existence of any living organisms. So the carbon element is present in all the living things. If it is a living thing, carbon is compulsory. And that is the reason even we say carbon dating technique is used to determine the age of the fossils, dead things, dead fossils, plants, animals, after the death, what is the duration from the time of death to the present day, how many years back the bone sample the collected by them or any sample collected by them belongs to which particular age, which particular period, they will be finding by carbon dating technique. And carbon dating technique is applicable only for living organisms, and so this clearly indicates it is always having carbon in it. Now, occurrence of carbon, if you see, it is available in the nature in free state as element as well as in the combined state. Now, first we'll see in free state how it is available. In free state, it is in nature. That means in nature, carbon occurs in free state mainly in two forms. One is diamond and the other one is graphite, and both are crystalline allotropes only. In combined state, carbon occurs in nature in the form of compounds such as carbon dioxide gas in the air, so CO2, carbonates, limestone, marble, chalk, all will have one formula only. These are the different names, but the formula for this is same, CaCO3. Fossil fuels like coal, petroleum, natural, this is carbon, nothing but more than carbon, that's it. This is the fossil fuels like coal, petroleum and natural gas will have the carbon. In petroleum it will be the combined state, more of the other hydrogen, oxygen, all those will be there. But if you are taking the coal, this is the one of the possible forms in which carbon occurs in nature. Now moving into the allotropy, what is allotropes or allotropy? The first, what is allotropy, is existence of an element in more than one physical forms. Existence of an element in more than one physical forms. So various physical forms in which an element can exist, or we can say existence of an element in more than one physical form can be given as allotropy. If you talk about allotropy for a minute, so if I'm taking the existence of an element in more than one physical forms, that is allotropy, carbon shows a variety of allotropes. Majorly we call them as crystalline allotropes, and amorphous allotrope. Crystalline allotrope and amorphous allotrope. Crystalline allotropes of carbon, if I am taking, these are again classified basically into three categories. One is diamond, the second one is graphite, and the third one is fullerenes. Whereas the amorphous allotropes of carbon, if I am taking amorphous forms of carbon, there are variety of amorphous forms. Coal we can take, charcoal. In charcoal, we have again wood charcoal, sugar charcoal, animal charcoal. So this is again classified into wood charcoal, sugar charcoal, animal charcoal. So varieties of this: lamb black, even many other, so many other options. Even we can say the different ignite, libuminite. So these all are some other categories, we can say. So many other amorphous allotropes can exist, but our major concern will be the natural forms of, or most available forms of carbon, that will be graphite and diamond. These are the most available forms of carbon, and the coal is the one from which the word carbon has been taken. So these are some of the forms which are more concerned about, and we discuss more a lot about. So coming back to the slide, diamond, the allotropes, one of the allotropes of the carbon we are taking, the diamond, crystalline allotrope. So I'll be mentioning this. Diamond comes under what type of allotrope? It's a crystalline allotrope. So diamond is a colorless, transparent substance having extraordinary brilliance. In Hindi, chamak. It's a glittering nature. It always shows when light falls on the diamond, you can see it has a high refractive index. Because of that, the light falling on the diamond from any direction, different directions have different types of refractions, and you can see the glittering nature of the diamond is different in different directions. We call this property is called anisotropy. This phenomena of difference in the property with respect to direction of approach. So if you are approaching in one direction, you see one type of observation. When you are approaching from another direction, you see another type of approach. This type of phenomena, where you get a difference in the physical properties with respect to directional observations or directional properties, we call this is anisotropy. Anisotropy, iso means same, tropy means change, aniso not having the same change in all the directions. So anisotropy. So it is because of that we can say this particular property is a specialty of diamond. It is the known hardest natural substance. Why it is the hardest substance in the nature? If you are taking the hardest substance is diamond, reason. So if you observe the diamond is the crystalline allotrope of carbon. Each carbon atom in the diamond is covalently bonded to 4 other carbon atoms in all the directions with a strong covalent bond tetrahedrally with 109 degrees 28 minutes or 109.5 degrees of bond angle. Each carbon atom is tetrahedrally bonded to 4 other carbon atoms in all the directions, leading to the formation of a large giant polymeric structure which is called as covalent solid or network solid. This comes under the category. Since there is no valence electron left on the carbon, all the 4 valency electrons present on the carbon are involved in the bonding. No valence electron is left. There is no uh, cleavage of the bond or free movement of electron in the species. No instability that can be possible in the species. So carbon is the most stable compound because of its all electrons are paired up, involved in the bonding, and every carbon is equally being placed at tetrahedral angle, and no angle strains, no strain in the molecule, giant polymeric structure. All these makes carbon as a special substance, hardest substance, known hardest substance. You can see the carbon, each carbon can be going tetrahedrally in all the directions. A rough picture, just it's only a rough picture I have shown you, showing that every carbon has a tetrahedral arrangement in all the directions, leading to the formation of a tetrahedral geometry and a giant polymeric structure. Going back to this particular slide, it is the hardest known substance. Reason for is the rigid structure of diamond. We have seen the rigid structure makes it a hard substance. Now, what else we can say about the diamond? If you see, the diamond does not conduct electricity. Why? To conduct electricity, we need free movement of either electrons or ions. So in the diamond, if you see, carbon has 4 valence electrons and each valence electron is covalently bonded, and every electron in the carbon is participating in the bonding. There is no free electron left in the carbon. And so carbon cannot further conduct electricity because no free electrons are available, no ions are available. It is purely a network solid, covalent solid, which is having no conducting property. It's a pure insulator, so it does not conduct electricity. There are no free electrons in diamond crystal. It does not conduct electricity because of that property. We have seen the reason also now. The melting point of diamond is very high. Why can't it be? You can see a giant polymeric structure is there. According to the concept of melting point or boiling point, always we should understand how much energy is required to isolate two constant particles from each other. This is what we say any physical change. That means the physical state can be obtained from one state to another state can be obtained by breaking the intermolecular forces between two constant particles and making the particles to move away from each other. But if you see in the diamond, every carbon is tetrahedrally bonded. It is not easy to break the bonds and make the carbons to move away from each other, and that makes diamond strongest material, not only strongest material, high melting point substance. So it is having the high melting point, which is being more than 3500 degrees centigrade. This is because a lot of heat energy is required to break the network of strong covalent bonds in the diamond crystal. If you have to break it, we need to supply the energy which is sufficient to break each and every bond in the carbon and makes the carbons to slightly displace. So this is very huge. So lots of energy is required to do this. So that's the reason it is having high melting points. Now, what will happen if we go for combustion? Normally, we know diamond is not that reactive. There are two types of allotropes, as we know, diamond and graphite. Originally, there are two types, thermodynamical and kinetical. Thermodynamically, graphite is more stable than diamond, but kinetically, diamond is more stable than graphite. Don't confuse in this. Again, I repeat, thermodynamical approach, if you see, thermodynamically, graphite is more stable than diamond, meaning when it comes to the reaction, who participates in the reaction more spontaneously and which is reacting in the reaction more rapidly. There are two types of cases, thermodynamical approach and kinetical approach. Who speaks about speed? Kinetical. Who speaks about the stability? Thermodynamical. So when you talk about the thermodynamical and the kinetical, graphite is thermodynamically stable and the diamond is kinetically stable. So when you talk about the reactions, when you see graphite reacts faster, graphite reacts faster is what we always see, but we should understand diamond is thermodynamically not stable, kinetically stable. So reaction is slow doesn't mean that it is the most stable compound. No. So that's the condition. Please be aware. If we are burning diamond in oxygen, so combustion reactions is burning of any substance in excess of oxygen is combustion. So if you go for combustion reactions, what is the purpose of combustion reactions? Normally, we always go for combustion reactions in organic compounds in order to know the products formed from the combustion reactions gives you what type of elements are present in that particular material. Example, if I have sulfur in the compound, sulfur dioxide comes out. Carbon in the compound, carbon dioxide comes out. Hydrogen in the compound, H2O comes out. So if I am saying if carbon is there, carbon dioxide comes. Sulfur is there, sulfur dioxide comes. Hydrogen is there, H2O comes. Like this, every element comes out in the form of their oxide, and we know to detect each and every one separately. So we can detect them chemically. We can detect the presence of these, formation of these can be detected. If I know that this is formed, this is formed, this is formed, that means your organic compound has which elements present in it? Carbon is present, sulfur is present, hydrogen. Let us imagine if this is not formed, then the compound has only carbon and sulfur. Let us imagine this is also not formed, then the compound has only carbon. Now, when we are doing the combustion reactions with oxygen, the diamond with oxygen, only carbon dioxide is formed. Now tell me, if only carbon dioxide is formed, what is diamond made of? It is made up of only carbon. So the conclusions are very important for us. So why we are doing combustions? It is only to know what is the energy it releases, what is the calorific value of the particular substance, how far the substance can be used as a fuel in industries, and what are the elements present in that particular compound. So all this information we can get from combustion reactions. The carbon dioxide formed by burning graphite can turn lime water milky. If you take graphite is also undergoing combustion reactions, we are getting a product. As I told you, we have chemically identifying techniques to each and every substance. Now if I have got carbon dioxide, how do I test carbon dioxide is present? If this gas is passed through the lime water, if lime water turns milky, what is lime water? Lime water will be CaO or OH twice. It is reacting with H2, this carbon dioxide, sorry, gives rise to, if it is reacting with carbon dioxide, CaCO3. Lime water turns milky white. This is an indication for the combustion the presence of carbon dioxide gas. So if I say carbon dioxide gas is present over here, this carbon dioxide gas gives you the lime water test, which indicates only carbon is present in graphite as well as in diamond. Now uses of diamond, if you see, diamonds are used in cutting instruments like glass cutters. If I want the sharp cutting of the glasses, we use those. You can see most of you might have gone through the glasswares. There you'll be seeing, if you want one dimension of glass, particular dimension, they will be using a special apparatus where it is the thin edged that diamond will be there at the end. Through that they will be cutting that particular glass. You will be seeing that, correct? So diamonds are used for making jewelry. Sharp edged diamonds are used by eye surgeons as tool to remove cataract from eyes. Very carefully they will be doing, but this is superb. No, the use, one of the medicinal use also, use it to remove the cataract from eyes. And see the structure of diamond. This is the best way they can show the diagram. I have shown you the rough one, but you can see here everywhere you can see the carbon is tetrahedrally present. It is a tetrahedral element here, this one and this one. If you compare this and this, exactly the same. So if you compare this with this, exactly the same. If you compare this with this, exactly the same. So they are tetrahedrally arranged in all the directions. Yes, moving to the next one. Sorry, let us come back to this. Graphite. If I am taking the graphite is a grayish black opaque substance. Grayish black opaque substance which is having the hexagonal, when you're taking hexagonal layered structures. Hexagonal layered structure. So graphite is a grayish black opaque substance which is having hexagonal layered structure. Now in this particular one, everywhere you can see this type of layers. These type of layers connected. This is a hexagonal we are talking about. So the hexagonal layer structure, which is a two-dimensional structure, where diamond is a three-dimensional structure, tetrahedral is a three-dimensional structure. Tetrahedral is three-dimensional, but graphite is a two-dimensional structure. So it is a two-dimensional structure where graphite have layer wise, layer to layer arrangement. If I say this is the first layer, below this there will be another layer, second layer, below this there will be another layer, third layer. So like this you will be having layered structure, 1 2 3. Between a layer and layer there is an empty space. This will be having the weak van der Waals forces between the layers and layers. You will be having weak van der Waals forces. Because of these van der Waals forces, graphite will have the slippery nature. They slide over each other. So if I'm taking, this is the central layer, the above layer will slide on this particular layer and below layer will slide on this. So there will be a sliding property. There will be a sliding property, and this slippery nature is used as an advantage in lubricant industry. So graphite is used as a lubricant because of the slippery nature, and that comes because of this weak van der Waals forces present. And if you observe any carbon in a hexagonal ring, if you take any carbon in this, each carbon atom, if I am talking about any carbon atom over here, if I take this carbon atom, this carbon atom is attached 1 here, 2 here, 3 here. Each carbon atom is attached with 3 other carbon atoms in a hexagonal ring structure. So having 4 valencies, it is only utilizing 3 electrons in bond formation. So what happens to the 4th electron? It is left as the unpaired or unshared electron pair. Because of the presence of that unshared electron pair, graphite exceptionally shows the conducting property. So it is a good conductor of electricity. So it is a good conductor of electricity because of this presence of the unshared electron pair on the graphite. Then third crystalline allotrope is Buckminster fullerenes. So before I talk about this particular structure, I'll show you the structure. This is the structure of Buckminster fullerenes. Buckminster fullerenes is been the word which is given in favor to an architect. Buckminster is an architect who constructed the laboratory in a dome, spherical dome shape. And since the structure of this fullerenes also appears similar to that particular spherical dome constructed by an architect, they have named it in the favor of him as Buckminster fullerene. He is not a scientist here. Second important point, it is also called as buckyball. It is similar to the buckyballs. So soccer ball, we call buckyballs is soccer ball. It is similar to the structure of a soccer ball. If you observe a football, you'll be having the rings. You will see a 6-member ring and a 5-member ring contacts will be there. You can see this is a 6-member ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it is in contact with a 5-member ring. You can see 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is a 5-membered ring, and this is a 6-membered ring. So a 6-membered and 5-membered fuse will be observed in this particular one, which appears similar to a football. So this is also called as buckyballs. Coming back to this, as I said, there are 6-membered and 5-membered rings. This is an allotrope of carbon containing clusters of 60 carbons atoms joined together to form spherical molecule. There are 20 hexagonal rings, 6-membered rings, and 12 pentagonals, 5-membered rings of carbon atoms in one molecule of Buckminster fullerene. So 20 6-membered rings will be there, and 12 5-membered rings are present in the structure of C60, Buckminster fullerene, which is the formula C60. It is a dark solid at room temperature. If we burn the Buckminster fullerene in oxygen, then only carbon dioxide gas is formed and nothing is left behind. Nothing is left behind. This shows that Buckminster fullerene is made of completely carbon only. Again, this is a spherical form of graphite. Remember, in a simple way, what is it? If you have a graphite layers, just taking back to this particular one, you have graphite layers. Try to fuse each layer to another layer and make them into a spherical shape, and that represents this particular structure, and that is nothing but Buckminster fullerene. So this is an additional derivative of graphite also, we can say. So this, where we get this 5-membered rings, whenever the layer of graphite, if you say first layer and second layer, if the first layer is full of 6-membered rings, second layer is full of 6-membered rings, when the first layer fuses with second layer, the point of fusion between the layers is a 5-membered ring. So that's why a fusion point is a 5-membered ring, and a 6-membered ring will be in contact with 6-membered ring also with a 5-membered ring. But any 5-membered ring is only surrounded by 6-membered ring, never it is attached to a 5-membered ring in turn. That is one of the major points to remember in Buckminster fullerenes. Coming to organic chemistry now, it is the study of compounds of carbon. However, element carbon and some of its compounds like carbon dioxide, carbonates, bicarbonates, they does not show any property resembling an organic, but shows the property more of inorganic compounds, and because of this they are studied under inorganic chemistry. If carbon is present, we cannot say it is organic compound. Along with carbon, it should be A hydrogen and carbon containing compounds, we call them as hydrocarbons. So hydrocarbons are carbon and hydrogen containing compounds, CXHY. And the study of hydrocarbons and their derivatives is replacing a hydrogen with a heteroatom. Any hydrogen atom is removed and replaced with some heteroatom, nitrogen, sulfur, oxygen, so on. Those all comes under derivatives. So it is study of hydrocarbons and their derivatives. Number of organic compounds available today for far exceeds total number of inorganic. If you imagine 10,000 compounds are mostly known to us in inorganic compounds, it is already crossed 7 million and trillion compounds of organic compounds in a span of, I can say, from 1940 to present. It has reached to this extent because in 1940s, in that particular time only, the Wohler has first synthesized the first organic compound in the laboratory. After that, they started to know that organic compounds can also be synthesized in laboratory. Till then, everyone believed organic is the word which is removed from organisms. Inorganic is taken from non-organic, that is non-living organisms. So if I say inorganic, it is purely extracted from non-living things, and organic is purely extracted from organisms like plants, trees, animals. But that belief is completely been, the vital theory is been completely been violated when Wohler has prepared the first organic compound in laboratory. Catenation. Why carbon shows such a huge number of compounds in a small span of time is because of basically many points. We can say the first one in that particular one is valency. It shows perfectly only a valency of 4. Second one is catenation. Third one is isomerism. And fourth one is multiple bond formation. It forms double bonds, triple bonds, having the tendency to form multiple bonds. High bond energy. So valency, catenation, isomerism, and multiple bond tendency makes carbon a unique element. Having all these properties in one particular element is very, very rare, and that element is carbon. And that's the reason organic chemistry has grown very huge in a very short span of time. And catenation, what is catenation? It is the property of an element where large number of its own atoms join together through covalent bonds. Simple line, if I have to say, catenation is the ability of an element to form long chains. Joining carbon to carbon, carbon to carbon, carbon to carbon. If you can form a long chain, then that is called catenation ability. And catenation is being observed in carbon because carbon can form a long chain. The best example is before only Buckminster-Fuller C60. 60 carbons can be fused. So it's not a small thing. So it can form long chain compounds, branched chain compounds, cyclic compounds, and that is the specialty of carbon. This property gives a scope for organic chemistry to synthesize new compounds which have wide applications. Today, organic compound finds applications in different fields. So coming to this, we have seen it can form branched chain. This is branched chain compounds. Here is the branched chain compounds, and it can form linear chain compounds. Here is the linear chain compounds and ring chain compounds. So we have it has the property to form branched chain, linear chain, and ring chain compounds. This is one of the property where we can see. Now here the branched chain, linear chain, ring chain. So what do you mean by branched chain? If you have a carbon chain which is in a straight chain, if one of the carbon is being displaced and move on to one of the carbons. So if you say the same 5 carbons, I'll write in this way, not onto the terminal but onto the intermediate carbons. Never write on the terminal. If you write here, now the same 5 carbons will now convert into branched chain carbons. So having branched chain to from straight chain to branched chain, this is called isomerism. So this property, isomerism, is a property which is one of the property why carbon shows maximum number of compounds. This is the reason. Now if you have a carbon carbon double bond, example, if I am taking 3 carbons are there with a double bond, the same carbon can be written in this way with 3 carbons Instead of writing these carbons are connected with each one in 3, and instead of one of the pi bond, this is connected to this, the bond comes here, it will form a chain. So even the chain, ring chain isomerism we call, so the chain can also be converted into the cyclic ring. So carbon can exist in many of these ways: branched chain, linear chain, ring chain. These all are the property which we call as catenation property in carbon. Moving to next one, classification of organic compounds. To study the large number of organic compounds present in convenient way, they are classified into different groups. Based on the structure, organic compounds are classified as aliphatic, aromatic, alicyclic, heterocyclic. Aliphatic carbons. We'll see what are aliphatic compounds. Aliphatic compounds are the compounds which have open chain structures, which can have carbon carbon single bond, carbon carbon double bond, or carbon carbon triple bond. It can be an alkane, alkene, or alkynes. Alkanes, alkenes, or alkynes. If you have open chain, the carbon can have only single bonds in the total chain throughout the chain. So if I'm taking the aliphatic carbons, this can be given in this way. You have carbon chain with all sigma bonds, or you can have the carbon chain with sigma and pi bonds. You can have a carbon chain with sigma and pi bonds where a double bond can come or a triple bond can come anywhere. We are not concerned about what type of bonds are present over here, but we are concerned only about what type of chain is here. If you have three types of chain: open chain, cyclic chain, and branched chain. Any branched chain, even if you write a branched chain, I want to write like this, sir. Yes, you write. Even this comes under aliphatic. So you have an open chain. It can be a linear chain or branched chain, doesn't matter. But if the chain is open, that means the first carbon and the last carbon have no connectivity, then it is an open chain. Any open chain carbon is an aliphatic carbon chain. Now if you talk about the second category, what is the second category we have? Alicyclic compounds. Alicyclic. Before going to alicyclic, in these we have alkanes of general formula CN H2N plus 2, alkenes of general formula CN H2N, alkynes of general formula CN H2N minus 2. Now alicyclic compounds, if I am taking, alicyclic compounds are those compounds which have cyclic ring with aliphatic carbon chain. Aliphatic cyclic rings with aliphatic hydrocarbon properties. Cyclic chain which behaves like an aliphatic hydrocarbons or aliphatic hydrocarbons, they are called alicyclic carbons. So that means you can have a 3-membered ring, 4-membered ring, 5-membered ring, even a 6-membered ring. You can have even a double bond present in the 6-membered ring, double bond present in 4-membered ring, doesn't matter. All these comes under the alicyclic compounds. The third category is aromatic compounds. Aromatic compounds. What are aromatic compounds? First one, it should be cyclic. Second, it should be planar ring, planar ring with all atoms in the ring coplanar. Third one, 4n plus 2 pi electrons, where n can be 0, 1, 2, 3, so on. If you have these three properties satisfied, cyclic ring, it should be cyclic with the conjugated double bonds. If you have conjugated double bonds, if you have a conjugated double bonds, then those come under aromatic. Now example for this, conjugation means we know double bond should be separated by single bond, that is the conjugation. Okay, so if I am taking a cyclic ring, 1 2 3, you can see here we have 3 pi bonds. 3 pi bonds is equivalent to 6 pi electrons. So if I am writing 4n plus 2 pi electrons, if n is equals to 1, then it is 4 plus 2 pi, this is 6 pi electrons. So it is satisfying 4n plus 2 rule. It is cyclic and it is having all carbon atoms in one plane. It's a two-dimensional structure, so it's all have one plane, and it is conjugated. Every double bond is separated by a single bond. You can see between any two double bonds there is a single bond, it satisfies. So if you satisfy all these 4 points, we say it is aromatic. Coming to the fourth one is heterocyclic. Heterocyclic compounds, meaning it should be a cyclic compound, but if you write this one and if you write O, this, here you have carbon, here you have carbon, here you have carbon. Every corner of a regular structure, polygon is a carbon. But if you see, here you have a carbon, here you have a carbon, but here it is not a carbon, it is an oxygen. So it is no more a carbon, it is a heteroatom. This is heteroatom. Any atom other than carbon is a heteroatom. If your ring has heteroatom, then that type of rings are called heterocyclic rings. Coming back to this particular one, aromatic compounds. Aromatic compounds are those compounds which contain at least one benzene ring in them. The word aromatic is derived from the word aroma. Aroma means fragrant smell, nice smell. Aromatic compounds have characteristic smells, and some of the examples of them, this is benzene. Methyl attached to benzene is toluene, CH3 group attached. OH group attached to benzene is phenol, and two benzene rings fused to each other is naphthalene. And if three benzene rings are fused to each other, we call this is anthracene. Next one, alicyclic compounds. Alicyclic compounds are those compounds which are similar to aliphatic but contain a ring structure. These molecules have less number of hydrogen atoms than corresponding aliphatic compounds. Less number of hydrogen atoms. Please try to understand this point. Alicyclic compounds are similar to aliphatic compounds, but the only difference is they have less number of hydrogen compounds and they have cyclic ring and still shows the property like an alkane, alkene, alkyne, and they have the properties similar to that of aliphatic hydrocarbon. So if 3-membered ring is there, propane, cyclopropane. 4-membered ring is called cyclobutane. 5-membered ring is cyclopentane. 6-membered ring is cyclohexane, where we know one carbon, if it is 1 carbon, 2 carbon, 3 carbon, 4 carbon, 5 carbon, 6 carbon, 1 is meth, 2 is eth, 3 is prop, 4 is but, 5 is pent, and 6 is hex. Provided here if you how many carbons are there, that will be the name. Corresponding no sigma bonds, it will be added with the word ane. If you have all carbon sigma bonds, ane will be added. If you have cyclic, cyclo will be added. That's the condition over here. Now going to the heterocyclic compounds. Heterocyclic compounds are those compounds which have ring structure where one or more carbon atoms of the ring, where heteroatom will be there. Heteroatom is other than carbon, any atom is a heteroatom. If one of the atom is heteroatom is a part of the ring, then it is called heterocyclic compound. So these all are the examples: pyrrole, thiophene, furan, pyridine, pyrimidine. These comes under the examples of heterocyclic compounds. Number of organic compounds today far exceeds the number of inorganic compounds. Every day, many more new compounds are added to this list. In order to study the properties of the compounds showing similar properties are grouped together, and these similar properties are because of the common reactive group present in them, and that common reactive group is called as functional group. When we use the word functional, any body functions with the head of the department. You remember, if you say it's a school, college, or an office or anything, the functioning of the total body will be administered by the administration, the head of the. Now for a carbon chain, who is going to administrate, or who is going to give the all the regulations or restrictions, or going to give the principal functioning authority, will be the functional group. So the functional groups, if you talk, functional group is an atom or a group of atoms which determine the properties of organic compounds, and these are the functional groups. If you have OH, it is called alcohols. If you have O between the carbon and carbon, here you have a carbon, here you have carbon, between the two carbons if you have O, they are called ethers. Aldehydes, CHO, CO, ketones, COOH, carboxylic acids, COO, esters, and H2, amines. So now if I am taking this particular one forward, before going to homework, see this particular one, this is the carbon chain. This total carbon chain is being ruled by this particular group. We call this as the functional group. What is this functional group? Acid functional group. We call this as carboxylic acid. Carboxylic acid. This total carbon chain is being functioned by this particular group. This is aldehyde functional group we call. And the carbon chain is being functioned by the CO group. We call this as ketone functional groups. If you have COC, the oxygen atom is between the two carbons, we call these are ethers. And if you have OH functional groups, now the carbon chain, total carbon chain, will be termed as alcohols. So remember one point over here, you does not get anything when you say acid, aldehyde, ketone, ether, alcohol. How many carbons are there in the carbon chain? No one can understand. Whether you have one carbon or you have 100 carbons, the functional group will only be the regulating authority who will be given the name of the compound. So the name of the compound will be given with respect to functional group, and the carbon chain have nothing to do with that particular one. So your authority or the functioning of the carbon chain will be under the control of the functional group. So those are the functional groups here mentioned for us. Again, go through this slide. These are the functional groups. Further about this we'll be seeing in the next lecture, lecture 2, about the functioning of those. Okay, so this is our homework. What is allotropy? Uses of diamond. What is the properties of Buckminster fullerenes? And what is catenation? What are the following aromatic compounds? Aliphatic, alicyclic. What is called as functional groups? Give some examples. We have seen those. Hope everyone understood this. Meet you in the next session. Thank you. Have a good day.